Welcome to Roadcase, the podcast that explores the live music experience. Thanks for joining us. I'm your host, Josh Rosenberg, and I'll be taking you on a journey through in-depth interviews with performers and key people in the industry to explore the magic of live music, how it can be totally transformative for both fans and performers, and we'll look at how they take it all out on the road. It's going to be a great ride, so here we go. Okay, everyone, welcome back to Roadcase. Thanks so much for being here. I'm your host, Josh Rosenberg, and we have a great episode this week and tons of great episodes coming up, so stay tuned for those. While you're here, I really want to thank those that support Roadcase, and I want to encourage anybody that would like to get involved in the Roadcase community to go over to Patreon at patreon.com/roadcasepod, where you can learn more about how to support Roadcase. You can also follow us on social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. You know what those are, and the handles at Roadcase Pod. We have a YouTube channel, Roadcase Podcast, and you can also get involved by simply emailing me. Tell me your comments, suggestions, we talk about music, whatever, favorite live show would be great. It's info@roadcasepod.com. And a great way to support Roadcase Podcast is to like and rate and review this podcast on your favorite listening platform. If you could just pause right now and go over there and hit up some stars and give a review, that would be fantastic. I'd really appreciate your support, and thanks to everyone for listening. So this week, I'm really excited to have Brian Teasley here. Brian is the drummer in a surf punk sci-fi band called Man or Astro-man, and he's also a studio musician who's worked with such diverse artists as Harmar Superstar, who was on Roadcase Podcast a few weeks ago, Polyphonic Spree, and St. Vincent. With Man or Astro-man, Brian was a prolific touring musician. He's said he's done almost 4,000 shows in his career, and he currently owns a venue in Birmingham, Alabama called Saturn, and Saturn is a highly respected venue amongst those that know, and fans, and that's any fan that's been to Saturn knows how friendly it is to fans, and especially how friendly it is if you're a band that has played there or expect to go there. Brian takes all that experience as he has from the road, mixes it with some good old Southern hospitality and an empathetic heart that Brian has, and really cares about what he's doing, takes all that experience from touring and is very sensitive to what bands need and what's the most important and what's going to help a band while they're on the road. He just knows from touring so much, and just turns that around and makes it just apparently a great place to play. And from a fan perspective, it's also a phenomenal venue. And I hope to go down there as soon as I am able to, and as soon as it's safe to do so. I'm going to head there because I got to check this venue out. And I know that you really enjoy this interview. Brian is such a joy to talk to. He's funny. He's got a huge heart, and he's game to talk about anything. So stay tuned for this one. It's a good one. Thanks again to everyone for listening. Thanks to Brian Teasley for being here on Roadcase. And here we go. Hey, Brian, thanks for joining me, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, right on. So wait, I didn't even ask you. You're in, where are you located?
I'm in Birmingham in the state of Alabama, the deep south here.
That's considered deep south? I haven't even been down there. You know, I'm from like Southern California. Southern Californians don't go to the south, I don't think.
Well, you know, it's funny because
at least I didn't.
At the music venue, I get what we call the Alabama handicap bump, which means when people show up from like all over the world and find out that we can make complete sentences and have running water, they're impressed. See, if you go to a club in Chicago, Chicago and they have that stuff, you're like, yeah, everybody has that stuff. But here, they're like, holy shit, those people in Alabama actually can make complete sentences.
So it's actually a good marketing move to have a venue down there because the bar is so low. Is that what you're kind of saying?
That is honestly exactly what I'm saying.
All right. Well, just so we got that clear, man.
Yeah.
So you own a venue called Saturn. You owned a venue, I believe, called Bottle Tree. But so you're in the venue business. But I love your old band, man. I mean, I'm a new fan. I'm new to your old band. But
New old stock.
What's that?
New old stock.
There you go. Right. Exactly. I'm enthusiastic about it.
Right. Okay. Good.
But so Man or Astro-man is it's a sci-fi oriented punk rock. Would that be a fair characterization?
Right.
I don't even know how to put all those words in order, but it's crazy.
Sure. No, I definitely, somewhere around there. We always called it science friction. It's always, so that's a pretty, apt, thing. Like a layman person that is trying to describe our band, always I hear people say like, oh, it's kind of like Sonic Youth meet the Ventures, which may or may not be true, but that'll give you some idea if you've never heard our band. It's kind of that, and we're also super annoying too. So there's that element.
Well, there's that. I was going to leave that up to you to say that. So
yeah, for sure.
Wait. So what was it? Who meets the Ventures?
People say the Sonic Youth.
Oh, Sonic Youth meets the Ventures. I would add meets Devo, but
right.
I mean, you're probably really, really tired of the Devo comparisons. Devo.
I want to point out and this shows my age. I just said the Sonic Youth. The Sonic Youths.
Utes.
Yeah,
Utes.
You know what's interesting, and the Devo guys are super awesome guys. But when we first started, we were being a lot more authentic to what the surf music paradigm is, and we were really, as far as like the stage show and the presentation, we were really coming off that, like being really into the Butthole Surfers, and it's funny because we were getting compared to Devo a lot, but we really hadn't dug super deep into Devo at that point yet. I mean, I knew the records from a kid, but it wasn't like I could tell you like the early hardcore stuff,
Well, you guys certainly took it in a different direction. What do you think why did those two things come together for you? Sci-fi, because there's a sci-fi element to it as well. You guys were wearing outfits that looked futuristic, and on a couple of your tracks you have some voices that sound like a spaceship lifting off, like NASA stuff. I know I think I read somewhere that you even had like some NASA copyright issues and using sort of logos or their name or something like that. But
yeah, NASA lawsuit.
Oh, well, that's significant.
Yeah. No.
But my question was, how and why did those two things come together for you?
Well, I've said this, before, but we were really influenced by stuff that we really hate. Because when we were coming around, it was around the time where modern alternative FM was just starting to, probably the first little tippy toe of Edge FM, X Rock kind of stations, and all that like overly sincere music of like, my dad didn't come see me play T-ball kind of music, like Pearl Jam or Live or Everclear, these kind of things. We didn't want to be self-important. We wanted to be disposable and weird, and we were going to change our names for every record because we were just in college wanting to really have fun with this. We never had an expectation that we were going to go on with it. And and we were kind of looking for a vehicle of how do we do this that kind of understates us and just kind of states the thing overall. The vehicle we really found for that was I'd been home over a break and kind of literally went in my parents' attic and was digging through and, found like the Venture Surfing LP and Dwayne Eddy, a couple like old school instrumental records and an Astronaut's record, stuff they had bought when it had come out.
Yeah.
And we were really getting into surf, and it was punk enough and speedy enough and fast enough that we were into it. And there were no words. It was, predominantly instrumental music. And we didn't want to sing about the stuff everybody else was singing about. We didn't want to sing at all at first, in fact. And so that kind of became our vehicle, and it was really, really enlightening and assuring that we kind of, when we got into it a little more, we found that there was some other bands starting around the same time, some that predated us as well, that were kind of doing a similar thing, like Shadowy Men on a Shadowy Planet, the Phantom Surfers, there's Huevos Rancheros from Calgary. There's this group of like-minded people that kind of all arrived at the same idea we had, in a way, as far as the platform of music to play. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was just kind of it was just, we were seeking something out like that, and it was really natural for us to do that, and really fun to do. Thank God we didn't choose ska.
Why is that?
Because then we'd have to be like, ska or Astro ska. Like, I don't know, we'd have to have ska in our name.
Yeah, well, I think the kind of the crybaby, like T-ball analogy and lumping Pearl Jam into that will probably rub some people the wrong way, but that's okay.
No.
But still, it's you guys are college guys. What does that feel like?
Well, look. Let me backtrack real quick. I respect Pearl Jam as a band. It was just their initial way they were marketed and pushed was very part of that whole like underbite, kind of like so overly emotive. As as they have gone over their whole career, they've done tremendously respectable things and supported a lot of cool artists. So that, I'm just talking about our initial moment of how we reacted to stuff that was getting played on the radio.
Does that mean that you guys were looking to be less?
But also, sorry, sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, go ahead.
But I say that because I respect Pearl Jam, not that I'm scared of dissing them. Because if I felt like dissing them, I'll diss them. Tell them to come on.
Yes, I will tell them for sure. You hear that, guys?
Yeah.
So no, I mean, I get that, and you were college kids at the time, and you were looking for a way in. But you seem to get traction from fans. Did your fans generally like sci-fi? Were they sci-fi, or were they surf punk, or were they all of them kind of a combination? What sort of feedback did you get? Because you guys took off. You also took off pretty quickly, if my understanding is correct.
Well, we were just kind of voracious in how we were just. I was the guy in the band that would kind of write every band that I knew or liked a postcard and be like, "Hey, we want to play with you guys if you come in the South." And back when things worked that way, when you send a postcard or connect with people or see their home address on the back of a record, I would always track people down. But also, I think when we were in school, which was in Auburn, Alabama, we were, I think our first 30 shows were all benefits for like the Auburn Gay and Lesbian Association, Amnesty International. We were just like, we're just going to play benefits, and that's what we're going to do. We don't need to make any money from this. And, it was very like very unstated manifesto-ish how we were doing it. And it was all mixed up and weird and only made sense to us. But so it was a lot of different kind of people early on. It wasn't like, we actually played a sci-fi convention one time, and it went over really badly.
Really?
Yeah, and it honestly was kind of interesting because we were like, these people like sci-fi. We like sci-fi. We're nerds. They're nerds. But since we were kind of punk rock, and just 19 and full of caffeine and idiocy, it actually was a situation where we were the jocks. We were ogre, like taking it out on Revenge of the Nerds. It was like, whoa, like where?
So they kind of took it the wrong way and thought that you were being antagonistic towards what they were really into themselves.
It just wasn't nerdy in the right way. It was a little too antagonistic and punk rock, and not not hokey.
Yeah,
hokey, but
that's going to happen. You can't judge a band off of one performance. I mean, you're just going to hit. When you do a convention, you're going to, it's hit or miss, right?
Right. Well, I think the band's one thing about the band that I think a lot of people miss, like if you read a Man or Astro-man review from anything in the last 20 years, it's like driving those teenagers wild, hot rods and rocket ships. And it's rare. It's kind of this thing like we're trying to play into the aesthetic of what our band kind of presents. But a lot of people have missed that we just kind of mostly always just try to be a tight band that played good shows and like to put out a lot of records and tour a lot. And a lot of the bands, I think, in the surf idiom that we've that maybe we've influenced a little bit, sometimes pick up on the elements that aren't the actual just being a band part. They may pick up on wearing jumpsuits or other things, and there's some great ones out there. But I feel like sometimes that's lost. That at the end of the day, we're just a rock band.
Yeah, interesting. So they pick up on other elements that you didn't feel. Yeah, I mean, they have to talk about something, right? I mean, sometimes. What I wanted to ask you was about touring. It looks like you guys just toured a ton. I mean, from my understanding, between 1993 and 2001, you played something like around the 1,500 shows in 31 countries. Is that accurate?
I think we played maybe a bit more countries than that, but yeah, it was, we've now played, 2,300 shows, and I've done about another 1,200 on top of that with other bands.
Wow.
So kind of, closing in on the 4,000 show mark.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot of shows, a lot of touring. I mean, with Man and Astro-man alone, Man or Astro-man alone. I mean, that's amazing. How did you begin to get that kind of momentum where it was going to be either, feasible or desirable to travel as a touring band?
Well, honestly, we were lucky to come up in a time where people were not scared of building bands, and we got connected through various friends, John Spencer Blues Explosion, Southern Culture on the Skids. Some other bands were connected with this agency called the Billions Agency out of Chicago, which was Botch and Ali Hedrick, who eventually became our agent in 95 and has always been our agent, and it's like amazing human for dealing with us. But it was a time where they would take on a small band that maybe had a good live show. And now in the paradigm that we exist today, or bands exist today, getting a booking agent is frankly the hardest piece of the puzzle. Like putting your record out, getting a label, like doing all these things have shifted, and getting an actual person that can book you in proper clubs is so crucial and so difficult to get. But we were lucky, and at that time it was a very small agency, and I think they had like 12 bands. It was like Pavement, Us, Jesus Lizard, Blues Explosion, like 10 or 12 bands at that point. And we were just really lucky to get connected through them to be able to, we'd send in, hey, we want to do the East Coast now, and we want to do this, and they'd always make it happen for us.
Right. I mean, and you knew, was it kind of college radio that was getting you out there and getting you the kind of recognition where you knew that you could get booked into these particular venues, or was it kind of like you were opening initially, or how'd that kind of work?
Yeah, we were doing a lot of opening for bands, and also I think it was the kind of band, if I can step back from actually being in the band for a second, it's the kind of band that was, if not putting on a good enough live show, was at least polarizing enough that there was going to be a certain amount of the audience that was going to come back a second time, just because it was such kind of a freak show at that point. Mm-hmm. And so maybe some people would be turned off by it, but it was usually the type of thing that more people would come the next time, and then a little more people would come the next time after that. So, and when we were doing it so much, we just kind of forced it through. I mean, I didn't really, when I first started touring, really have a great grasp upon what it was going to be like as far as how many people were going to be in the crowd. And the first tour we did were with some beautiful, amazing people who are friends now but didn't know us at the time. They were just on the same agency, the Mekons, and John Langford took us on tour opening for the Mekons, which was a great honor. And the Mekons were a huge, amazing punk band, had such a storied career in my head. And then we drove all the way from Alabama to Grand Rapids and played for like 60 people. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking like the Mekons, we're going to play for 1,000 people. And that was a real wake up call at like how much work you had to do on an organic basis of just touring, because there wasn't the internet to just, have a video that really hits on YouTube, or, these kind of amazing shortcuts that people have to bypass the organic following.
What you're saying is that you don't need to play as many shows today because there's YouTube?
Yeah, exactly. Honestly, I mean, like, or the thing is, we used to play, and one thing I'll notice about looking at bands that come through my club's routing is they'll hit a lot of major markets, but you don't see a lot of these bands anymore doing like a 9-week straight tour playing every day in the United States. They don't hit as many of the Kalamazoos and the Peorias and the Cheyennes. They'll go where it has the most impact. It's more calculated, where we were like, oh, let's, wow, we had a great show in Champaign. Let's go there every time. Or let's go to these weird little places that we've never been before. And that just seemed to work because you really had to do it that way. Even if you had a video on like MTV on 120 minutes that got played some, or you were in some magazines here and there, that, it was really, you still had to earn it in a live sense.
Yeah, a lot of hard work, hitting small towns. You still had to do, it sounds like you really had to do a ton of legwork at that time. Is that true?
Yeah, 100%. And I have to say, at that point, I loved doing it. Like I was.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you felt like would you be happier today if you didn't have to? I mean, there are certainly a lot of bands today that do that, hit smaller towns, hit smaller clubs, tour a ton to get there to get out there because they have a live show that's really cool and fucking attractive, just like you guys did at the time.
Absolutely,
there are some analogies.
I would say it's flipped, and that's more of the minority than the majority, when it used to be that was the majority back in the day. And not that one's better than the other. I'm not dissing the way things work now or dissing the way bands operate, because it totally makes sense for them. But I know I loved it. I was kind of the band's ersat manager and player manager, kind of, like George Brett or something for the Royals. And I was
exactly like that.
Yeah. So, I loved doing it. I loved sending postcards to John Pill or whoever, and just like being like, all they can do is not answer it or not see it. Like, it doesn't take me but a stamp to send this. Well, the reason why I was kind of the player manager was that 2 of the members were in a very intensive industrial design program, and I was just studying film. And so I kind of I got super into college radio and was the music director at our station. So that was the kind of thing where I just had to take it on because I had less to do, and I started not giving a shit about school. And it kind of has come out in our band, the industrial design and film element. So I guess we majored for the right things to be in Manor Astro-man.
Yeah, I mean, you guys certainly came by it honestly. I was very impressed when I saw one of the former members is like in biodiesel.
Yeah,
and
yeah, it's a biodiesel company, and he's still like the person you're talking about is Rob Del Bueno, who is Coco in the band, and he's one of the most brilliant kind of redneck geniuses. He's not really a redneck, but he's from Alabama, so I will count that. But he is always the guy. There's always a guy that likes to take apart watches when they're kids and figure out how everything works. And he was always the member that has built Tesla coils and things that we use on stage, Van de Graaff generators, like dangerous things that we use live.
Theremin.
Yeah, so that was kind of always a big part of having him there. Plus, he can fix anything and bake a potato on a, Chevy van engine block and things that come in really handy on tour.
Yeah, well, that would.
Yeah.
But I guess that made me think of, you guys had a lot of gear when you were touring, right? Was that kind of the case back then also?
Yeah, it was way too much. Like more is more, was less is a bore was kind of our adage. And I don't know why. I think we didn't want it to look like a rock band playing on a stage. We wanted it to look like some crazy thing. Now like so many bands have like an automated light show through Ableton or other programs, or they have a lot of projection. Mm-hmm. But at the time, the way we figured out how to do that was take about 20 console TVs out that all weighed about 70 pounds, set them up on stage with videotape players, with VHS players, run them with coax into every single television, and do that every single night and break it down and do it for, 300 days a year sometimes.
Were you playing into each one of the TVs the same thing?
No.
Or different?
We had edited a bunch of videotapes of random kind of B-movie sci-fi footage. And
that's cool. And like just have a bunch of different images. That's really cool.
Yeah, and then eventually we switched to having like 5 16-millimeter projectors, which a friend of ours, Stuart Ellis, ran for years and years and years and did super cool things with that.
So how'd you haul all that stuff around?
We had a huge trailer and not much room in our van for people.
Yeah.
And also there again, it's why I never get to do the loadout. They, being industrial design majors, like figure out every cubic inch where something could go. It's kind of like, and we would always have, like if you've seen that instrument documentary with Fugazi, how they have the written layout of where everything goes.
That's like the key to touring is to get that layout, and
if one
thing fits in there perfectly.
Yeah, and early on we didn't ever play any like big clubs that where you'd even consider having a loader. But sometimes when we'd have loaders at clubs, it was like, no, don't do it, because we're not gonna be able to get anything in there if you do it.
Right.
So yeah, that was kind of how it worked. We just crammed everything in there.
And playing 200 shows a year, you guys were doing that a lot, right? I mean, how did that, not only from a logistical standpoint, but how did the momentum as a band and as a performing troupe going out there and just playing and being a touring band, how did that evolution kind of snowball into? Did it snowball? I mean, you're playing a lot of shows. Were you playing a lot of shows because you wanted to, because you had to, because you felt there was momentum? What was the thoughts and the feelings at that point?
Well, when you're kids that grow up in Alabama and you get a chance to, go to Australia or Slovenia or Brazil or wherever, it's not like, well, we could be stuck here in Alabama our whole lives, or we could go everywhere and anywhere we can. So it just and we were just really energized. So we would say yes to everything. Like anything that we thought was cool, we would say, yes, 100% we're there. When do we leave? And it was, I don't know, it's just kind of based out of that. But, a lot of people, and I just heard your last interview that you did with Ken Stringfellow, who's been a friend of mine for a long time.
Yeah, great guy.
And he's the biggest hustling, most hardworking person like I know. But I sometimes look back at that time. There was one year, I think it was 96, where I was either in the studio or touring for 347 days that year.
Wow.
And probably, calling and working on other things for the rest of the days. I don't look back on it with a badge of honor. And I honestly think, without being too philosophical and criticizing society, is there's this thing as Americans where we feel like we have to work so hard and do so much. And like, if people ask you how much you slept, you say like, a lot of times you'll say like 30 minutes less than you did, or like hour. It's like, I only slept 4 hours last night. Right. And like, we wear that as Americans. It's like a badge of honor. And I kind of think, whoa, we kind of like hit it really hard. And there was a long time where we got to be not from going from best friends to everybody listening to their own headphones in the van or on a bus or wherever we were. And it's one thing having a club now. I always never step in and tell bands or give bands advice like, hey, I'm an old guy. I've done this a lot. Let me give you some good advice. I never do that. But I see people, young bands that are kind of have some momentum pushing it too hard, and they're doing a sound check, and there's a mild quarrel about a bass part. And I see it right away that what they're arguing about isn't the new bass part. It's the fact that they've been overexposed to each other, and it's just coming out in random ways. And I'd always like to say at that point, hey guys, if you hit it for 3 weeks, went home for 3 weeks, and just chopped it up more and really managed the longevity of your band by knowing when to take a break, you're going to last a lot longer, stay friends, and be happier. But of course, I never will say that because they need to learn that on their own, and it's not my place. You know, I'm at a club, they're playing one night on a 6-week tour, so
Yeah.
I'm never. I mean, if they asked, I would say it.
You've never said that to them.
You know, I've said it to people that have asked me for my started talking about touring. I think there's probably been a few that I've said it to, but never unsolicited.
I mean, there's a lot of talk these days. There's a lot of talk about mental health these days, and people are talking about those kind of things a lot more, I think, which is a good thing. And if you read books on touring, there's always a section on mental health. And I just got talking to a band, Future Birds. They're from the South. You probably might be familiar with them.
Sure,
Yeah.
of course, yeah.
They tour a ton. We talked a little bit about mental health, how they're very cognizant of how you can get into that deep kind of tour depression hole. Happens when people get into their head in just ordinary life and day-to-day stuff, and how it's really, really important to kind of overcome that with communication with others on the van when you're touring. That can be, you know, a thing, and that would be interesting. You know, you set up at your venue and the gorgeous green room space, and we'll talk about that you have, but at Saturn. But set up flyers for we're gonna have an informal kind of get together counseling session today.
Yeah, I'll get like a fainting couch and get everybody on it and say, so tell me how you guys are feeling right now. You know, I just want to kind of get a vibe of where you guys are at. Just give them a free session that if you come to Saturn in Birmingham, which we have a great club, we have a nice overnight apartment for bands. Please come see us if you can. But if you do, for free, I will give your band a complete evaluation of
Right.
where you guys are with your mental health.
Right. And you're not a licensed professional psychologist, right?
Oh, but by the time the pandemic's over, I will be.
Okay, so we transitioned over into your venue, which I want to talk about, but I'm so interested in that that you had toured so much with Man or Astro-man, and the dynamics of doing that when that band was doing so in the 90s, 30-ish years ago. But now you're running a venue called Saturn in Birmingham. You've been doing that for a while. And you also had another venue called Bottle Tree, which closed a couple of years ago. Can you talk to me about those venues? And they're really well respected in terms of touring stops.
Yeah, and in the interim of that, of kind of when Man or Astro-man went on a long hiatus, Rob, the bass player, and I had started a recording studio in Atlanta. But with the band stopping, it just kind of got where we needed a break from each other. And I started kind of being kind of like a hired gun in a certain sense. Like I played with a band called The View on Sub Pop, and then I played with the Polyphonic Spree for a lot of years. And then I recorded and played with St. Vincent. And but had moved back to Alabama after being gone for a long time, and hated it when I came back. Absolutely felt it was culture shock from moving from bigger cities to here. And also having grown up here, it just felt really small and void of a lot of culture. And in 2005, I kind of had this, me and my partner at the time, I kind of had this shit or get off the pot moment of like, well, if the thing that we want to have here is not here, let's just make it. And maybe there's 30 other people that give a shit. And it turns out that, there was, and we were so lucky. It's now a barbecue restaurant, this place. And it's like, I tell people, yeah, that's where Joanna Newsom and Beach House and Bonnie Prince Billy and TV on the Radio, they played in the soda fountain section.
Which place you're talking about? Bottle Tree?
Bottle Tree, yes.
Yeah.
Correct. So we were really lucky to kind of fill a void here in the city of Birmingham at a really appropriate time, and had so many people so kind to come see us. And it was a lot of calling on favors from old tour buddies and people that I knew, and just, hey, please, we try to do the best we can with this little club. Would you come by if you play Atlanta, and come by after, the next show or something and play for us? And it was amazing, the shows we got there. I didn't really even realize it at the time, but, it was this kind of thing where we just kind of coasted off the idea of a lot of us that worked there just tried to be like, the first tier of our obligation is to the artist, because if the bands have a very good time where we provide them everything they need and are transparent and don't get in their way, let them do their thing well, they're going to be in a good mood. They're going to play a better show. The audience that comes sees them play is going to have a better time because they're seeing a better show, and our bar and tickets and everything are going to do better because people have had a good experience. And it was, not that that's revolutionary. There's been so many amazing clubs. I mean, people named the Vera and Groningen and in the Netherlands all the time. And so many clubs that already did that. It was just here. It wasn't necessarily the status quo of how people were, or a lot of places of how they run venues.
Yeah. What are the venues that you mentioned in the Netherlands, in Holland?
The Vera, which is like kind of a classic one.
What town was that?
It's in Groningen.
Groningen. Okay. Mm-hmm.
And our booking agent, this guy Igor, was based out of there. So we got to kind of really be part of that club over the years. And
interesting.
They fed the bands. It's a very, like, a lot of times, especially clubs that kind of have European, there's more subsidization of the arts in Europe. So a lot of times, sometimes just getting a little operating money allows for clubs specifically in the Netherlands and France and Germany a little bit, and some other places, not in the UK, but, able to have a band department or be able to feed the bands, like with a nice chef and a home cook type meal where everybody kind of sits down with the venue staff. And we kind of came at it at this place, Bottle Tree, with the idea that we're going to do that kind of classic, dumb Southern hospitality, keep our punk rock ethos and background in place, and, throw it in with a place that looks like a crazy bad art museum of folk art and insanity, and hope that people like it.
That's interesting that you're taking that model from, obviously you're benefiting from the years of touring that you did, and you're reflecting really on ways that you were treated in Europe in particular. Was that not necessarily the case in the States? I mean, I'm not really making a judgment. I just think it was a curious, interesting comparison.
Not as much in the States. I mean, you still find really great places, and a lot of times those would be like the DIY spaces where you'd hang out with a bunch of kids that were skateboarding that made you a huge vegan meal, and there were just, so we're kind of combining like the places that had a really great sound staff with the concept of, and a nice PA that sounded good and everything was working, with like the cool like DIY punk spaces where everybody was so nice. And yeah, it was kind of like getting to tour as much as I did was kind of a great sampling of like, if I ever get to do this, I'm going to pull this from this place and pull that from that place and try to put just all the good stuff in there and get rid of all the bad stuff.
Yeah, for sure. You talked about how you want to have it. The original ethos was to have an obligation to the artist, to treat them well, to just be good to people in general, and that will pay off through the bands being happier, playing better shows, hence people are happier, people eat more, drink more. Has that panned out?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely it has. I mean, sometimes I think we err on the side of like overextending with the artist, you know. But if I was going to,
how's that?
well, you know, like we often were always the club that would get every single thing on the rider, even if it was like kind of over our budget, or we would, you know, if a band wanted to sound check an hour past doors and it was going to cause a bottleneck at the front door, we were always bending for the bands. But, you know, if I'm going to err, I'd rather err on that side with the artist than somewhere else, you know, because what people don't realize is, say a band's playing your city, or I'll use Birmingham because I'm here. Mm-hmm. Somebody may have driven overnight from Dallas, Texas, and they're tired, and they've been on tour for 8 weeks. They've been in a loud van or a bus. They're sick. They're frustrated. And just providing them a nice, clean space with a properly working system, with a nice staff that will help you if you need anything, or give you, you know, if you don't know where to get, you know, food or cigarettes or whatever you might need. Having helpful people is surprisingly rarer than it should be, or at least it was in my days of touring. And that was kind of the thing that we always just tried to put in place. And kind of our whole staff, anybody new that comes in kind of gets the rigmarole of like, you know, these are artists, these are the people that we're here for, and we respect them, and we're going to do everything we can within now, if somebody's rude or disrespectful or trashes something, you know, sure, like we've had to deal with bad situations occasionally, but rarely, you know, like,
yeah, what goes around comes around. I mean, someone needs to be spanked. You're going to spank them. But what you were saying, we started this out, and I can't remember if we did this on the air or on air or not. But you were laughing about how, you know, I'm in Alabama, so the bar's kind of low. But I think you're just fucking around. I don't think that's actually the case. I think you have a high bar personally for this level of hospitality with respect to how artists are treated.
Well, what I mean by that is, like, if a band's coming from San Francisco and they've never been to Alabama their entire lives, they're a new young band, they're like all 23, and like, oh my God, this is going to be like the Gimp scene from Pulp Fiction. Oh
God.
And then all of a sudden, like, we're nice and, you know, try to be helpful. They're like, oh, this is actually kind of cool. You know, this is actually like, you know, and we've had people like Carrie from Sleater Kinney is like called Birmingham the Portland of the South, which I don't know if I want or is actually true. And John Hodgman, the comedian.
That's still a great quote, though. You got to put that on some of your product literature for sure.
Right. And then and Pete Buck was just here with Alejandro Escovita, and he was like, man, I should buy a house in Birmingham. This is way cooler than I thought it was going to be.
And he's coming from Athens.
And I love, well, he's in Seattle now, but I love.
Oh, right. I should know that from the Ken String.
Right, from his interview. But I love when we like defy somebody's negative connotation, because if you see us like on anytime we're on the Daily Show or anything like that, it's like Alabama just yet again did the dumbest blah blah bang ding 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 ding, and it's just
dueling banjos.
And here in Birmingham, we're almost like you know, we're like this little island of you know, kind of cool people trying to make cool stuff happen in this sea of this very red state. And not that there's not a lot of cool other little places in Alabama, but we kind of have a like force field around our city.
Yeah.
and I love Alabama, you know, for better or worse. It's been a odd and awesome place to grow up at the same time.
So Bottle Tree closed in 2015. Why did it close?
Well, at the time, I had actually gotten out a year before because I just kind of, I felt like I had done everything I could do with it. And it was also all the great stuff of people being so kind to us and getting a lot of great national press about the venue and so many people saying nice things. But when there was like 250 people in there and the place felt like it was going to implode and the ceiling was leaking and I was changing out water buckets from the ceiling in between bands, it just got that wore on me. And I kind of just had a separate, I don't know, idea or vision for another place that I wanted. That was slightly bigger. Like we're like a 550 cap, which is right at the level where to me, you still put on shows and not concerts. I know that's just a vague, abstract connotation of the difference, but it's not a place where you go and there's a barricade and there's 10 guys wearing security shirts in front of the stage. Like you can go to our place and if you want to spit on the guitar player or he wants to spit on you, it can still happen.
Right. You don't have to have very good aim in a 550 cap venue, right?
Not that this is agnostic front in 83 or something like that, but it's
a perfect size for, that's kind of my favorite size. It's sort of big enough that it's like really feels big energy when necessary, but small enough so that, you're not walking a mile to the bathroom, among other things.
Yeah. I mean, you're really lucky being in Chicago. So many amazing clubs. Yeah.
I mean, Lincoln Hall kind of comes to mind.
Lincoln's amazing. That's where, Shellac does most of their shows there. And, some friends of mine work at this place called Sleeping Village.
Yeah, I love Sleeping Village. Yeah,
super artist friendly.
Is it 500?
No, it's three.
Uh-huh.
But it's and one of our sound guys had a connection with somebody that had come through with Sleeping Village and ended up working there. And we played the Bottle a ton over the years, and we played the Metro. Like it's
Did you do a Man or Astro-man show there like slightly before everything imploded?
Yeah, we were on tour now. I mean,
when I said I meant Sleeping Village, yeah.
Yeah, that was the last show of the tour, and that was the 27th of February last year.
Right. Wow.
So we were on the COVID trail.
Yeah, I know. You had along with a shit ton of other bands, you had a tour that was you were going had 15 different cities on it, right? And that thing just like
Yep. Yeah, and we got through it, but right when we got through it was like, oh wow, we were right in the heart of where they're saying it's starting to go crazy. So, and that kind of led to the new club. We shut down on March 8th or 9th, and my friend Sean Tillman, who's Harmar Superstar, has a new project called Heartbones, and he was
I just talked to him the other day. That's coming up.
He's great.
That's coming up like next week.
I will say it right here and now, and you can mention this to him.
Yes.
I did not this is totally ridiculous to talk about in this podcast, but I did not enjoy the Weeknd Super Bowl performance as I think
as much as his halftime performance at the Minnesota Timberwolves.
Right. And so a friend of mine, Bob Schreiner, and I are starting a campaign to get Harmar at least in a cameo for next year's Super Bowl, because he crushed it. He would crush it.
Yes.
So if you're listening to this, help me get behind this. We got to make this happen.
I think this is for sure. This is gonna air after I air Harmar. Which will probably be like next week. So we're talking we're mid-February right now, a little more than mid-February. So, we can just sing the praises. I will for sure talk about how great that performance is. And I do, when I just spoke to him last week, but we'll say here just to kind of be, figure out the timing. We're saying that was an incredible perforance. I told him that was it was just so phenomenal. He's so great.
Yeah, and it's we could what is time anymore during the pandemic? Who knows what day it is?
Right. But we haven't even you I mean, you've been hit hard with not only, you guys were on tour, you finished your tour before COVID hit, fortunately, but you're a venue owner.
Right.
So,
right. I made the very pandemic proof career of half of it playing live music and the other half bringing live bands to play.
Yeah, right, exactly. So you had
very
very limited downside in a pandemic.
Right, exactly.
Oh, Jesus, we're all laughing about it now and just crying at night.
I know. So,
well, it's given me a lot of platform to talk to bands about music, live music, and where they're at and what they're doing, and so many things, so many different avenues had opened up now. Talking about streaming, which came to mind when you were talking about playing smaller cities. I think a lot of bands these days, what things that I've heard is like, well, we don't necessarily have to make that extra 400-mile drive to play a small city. We can, if we strategically, we can set it up where we might, if we have a stream, then we know other fans are coming and listening to us play. For example, Futurebirds were just talking about, they were getting off, and that's coming out this week. They're getting off playing. We just booked it into an Airbnb and just streamed that thing instead of making the 400-mile trip to X, Y, and Z. I mean, clearly this is not it's not a substitute for seeing a band, but in terms of if you are from the band perspective, it reduces the amount of mileage that you have to put in. And that's kind of one of the things I think is going to be sticking around post-pandemic.
Yeah, for sure. And there's a lot of great things about that. I mean, how much have we done to the environment by touring over the years? All these bands just
yeah, God, we haven't even covered that. Like, bring your biodiesel man on here.
Right,
we'll cover
exactly.
the environmental impact.
And there are a lot of cool people that are doing like green sustainable tours, and it's great that people are starting to think about touring in a way that's like, because it is, let's be honest, it is a lot of people on the road, a lot of people traveling, and a lot of, pollution coming from that.
Yeah. But well, there could be carbon offsets on ticket prices too.
Don't joke about it.
No, I'm not. No. I totally said that in seriousness. I've paid carbon offsets in in different capacities, and I can't exactly remember when the last time I did that, but it'll come to me. I was not joking. There could be something.
Yeah, and I thought about here even giving people it's so much to have to work with managers and agents and things, but I'd love to give people a $2 show discount if they ride a bike or walk to the venue, or have that built in. I have a lot of ideas that I haven't put in place yet, but that I'd like to do, that I would hopefully, I'd love to be part of a trend or follow a trend or start a trend of those type of things.
I'm a bike rider. I love riding bikes in all kinds of different capacities, fast road bikes, off-trail bikes, cruiser bikes, and I could ride my bike to every show I went to in Chicago if I wanted to.
You have a very flat city. You have a very flat city.
There's that, yes, but I also live, in a densely populated area with a ton of venues.
Of course, yeah. So that's great.
This is a great cycling city, so that would be something really interesting. What are some other ideas kind of that you have?
Before I answer that, I wanted to talk about the streaming thing just super quick because it was on my mind.
Please do.
Part of me, I love, and a guy like Ken that you just interviewed is a great example of people thinking outside of the box and trying to find ways of how we can still connect as humans in this type of world, because this may not be the only time this happens after we're hopefully through it. We could live with these things, and it's great that we're finding as artists and people that help facilitate art to get out there. With that said, I'm such an old curmudgeon, old school person that I still don't quite feel like, until we get to the point where like virtual reality can actually make you get spit on a guitar player by the, you have to have, I think
4D.
There's not, right, exactly, and the problem with virtual reality, I figured out what it is finally, of why it's not ever been massively adopted, is because to other people, if you're the only person wearing it, you look like a freaking goofball.
Yeah, among other things. Right?
It's not that it's fun. It's fun to do, but anyway. But point being is, I don't know. It's just like to get the I mean, I guess people could set up a PA in their house and do hologram. I don't know, but it's just not the same. And so much effort and infrastructure of like, how can we, like the Flaming Lips did, where they actually did the reverse of what Wayne normally does and put people in the bubbles.
Yeah.
And, all that stuff is great, but at the same time, at what point does it not become in the same genus and species of a real live show and becomes a different thing entirely? I think there is a point,
Well, I mean, that begs the question, is there something that's as good as a live show? I think the answer is no. But in the absence of that, there's ways of coming pretty goddamn close to it,
Yeah, and I like that we're.
I mean, I'm overly positive about it because if I get negative about it, it's just going to be a fucking more of a bummer. So, and I don't want it to be a bummer.
If there ever was a time to be blindly optimistic, it's
now.
It's now. And I like that that there's been such experimentation with how to figure this out, and that people have been creative with it. I love watching streams personally, just because I love checking out bands and seeing classic shows. But I still hope that we can find a way that we get back to having a thriving live touring industry, and there again with some forward thinking of, how can we do this where it is more sustainable? How can we do this where it does make more sense? The great thing about streaming is like, if you don't ever get to go tour Indonesia or whatever, or wherever, somebody in Jakarta might get to see you play that never got to see you play other than just watching YouTube videos or whatever. So
yeah, I mean, you're, as opposed to being available to the 300 people that are at the venue on that night, you're available to 100% of your fans in 100% of the world, technically.
Right, but I will say, as one more caveat, as I've done like a parade of asterisks here,
it's fine.
That
it works.
That I think punk rock has always been based on the idea of affecting a small amount of people in a huge way, as opposed to a large amount of people in a nominal way. And so I do think, even though there's a great democratization of being able to stream, it's kind of antithetical to that concept, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, so you're saying that basically, well, that this punk rock ethos of being able to affect a huge amount of people.
No, a small amount of people in a huge way. A small amount of people in a huge way versus a large, like you play a festival, you're affecting a huge number of people, but maybe not, maybe they're just like also walking or just hit a tab of acid or whatever, but if you're in there and you're playing for like 180 people and everybody's in at that moment together with the volume, the sound, the club's too hot, you've waited forever to get there, and it just all hits and it's amazing. People remember that stuff for the rest of their lives. I don't know if somebody would say, man, this future island stream I saw during that pandemic was like, man, I'm still thinking about that and I'm 80. I don't know if that's going to happen.
Yeah, two things. One, I think you're correct. I think that there's nothing that really hits so hard on an overall sensory level as a live show from every sense, right? And when you're in it, and there is something that's incredibly valuable and about the human shared collective experience of being in a room or being at a festival, what have you, with so many different people that are super into whatever you're watching, okay? Right. That's never going to happen in a stream. If you're looking purely from a musical standpoint, and that's also begging the question, if you're looking at it purely from a musical standpoint, which begs the question, can the band play the same way without so many people in the room? Which I do think they can play 90%. They can go 90% of the way. I think the other, maybe they might argue less. It kind of depends. Then it can happen, and those times are memorable. The music is memorable. The overall experience of being in that room and having those highs and sharing it with everybody. You don't get that shared sense. Just a little bit you do. There's ways of doing it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think about things that I've watched and not been physically at that have really affected me. Has one more asterisk, is like something like you see, the Dead Boys on some old, cherry red videotape that you had as a kid, or you see like U2 at Red Rocks, or, the part of seeing those shows are that there's people in the audience having a great time, but just seeing people in their home studio doing it still doesn't have quite that energy.
No, you don't. Yeah, go ahead.
But I think maybe if people need to start doing these things. Okay, I'm gonna give a slew of advice. Start smashing your equipment at the end of your live stream. Like trash your house.
Yeah.
Like turn your couch over. Like make it as extreme as you would do at a real live show for a real. Like try to maybe it's just jumping on your bed, but try to crowd surf. Like do all those things. Come up with things to fill that void.
Yeah, that'll work. That'll work. Smashing guitars, are you riffing off of Phoebe Bridgers?
Yeah, or you're like, you say to your partner, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to break the microwave with my Stratocaster, but I was just in the moment in my stream."
Yeah, exactly. It's just a function of that it's a microwave, it's a guitar, it's really meaningless.
Right, and I don't mean to demean all these efforts at all. I think they're very valid and very great, especially for now. And I think you are ultimately prognosticating the right thing with that. These are going to be connected to shows from here on out.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, streaming was part of the scene, huge part of the jam band scene with Fish, et cetera, and other bands
Sure.
even before this occurred with many different bands. I mean, this would be, they're live streaming a show tonight. But yeah, it's taken on extra significance. It's given a level of an outlet and something that's helped us maintain somewhat of a level of new normalcy, let's say.
Right.
But
right.
I've seen some remarkable musical performances and some significant ones for different reasons. Like I was listening to Billy Strings over the last couple of nights that were playing he was playing at the Cap Theater and commemorating the Dead's performance, a 50-year anniversary of the Dead's famous February 1971 run at the Cap Theater. Yeah. And they did this interesting ESP experiment and crazy things and fun out-of-the-box kind of ways of commemorating that itself and that weird sort of mind-altering kind of sending out images to other people and seeing whether they can capture them and seeing if that would work. But there's other ways of just being significant about live streams, and I think there's been a lot of great art that's been created around that. Yeah, people aren't sweating on me, and there's nothing like being in a room of however many people, 300 to 2,000 to, I'm going to pause at the arena part, but still there's that the shared collective is not particularly there, but it's there in different ways.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, and like you said, it's totally valid and totally, you can have a great experience with it. But just think about this hyperbolic example. If you were at the fight in the first row when Mike Tyson bit that dude's ear off and you got a little...
Buster Douglas? No, was it Buster Douglas?
Yeah, I forget who it was. I'm not a big boxing guy. Yeah. But if you got a little driplet of blood on your face, you're like, oh my God, I was there. He bit the guy's ear off. Versus like you saw it on TV. It's crazy.
Totally
you're
different.
Like, that was insane. But it's yeah, like you're saying, it's still, not quite there, but it's great and valid. And I sound like I've been condescending and demeaning of it, but I'm really not. I'm just, kind of analyzing it as I go here.
No, absolutely. Do you see it changing the way that you think about your own venue?
Yeah, I think I've honestly, and I'm just being in all earnest candor here, I kind of enjoyed not the hustle and bustle of like what we all in the industry call Rocktober, and you have like 40 shows in a row at a small club and like every day for 40 days, and you're promoting a show that happens, you're trying to promote 40 shows all at once or even more as they come up. I've kind of enjoyed being away from the hustle and bustle of constantly promoting on social media and all this, and I've taken a little nice space because a lot of times, especially with a platform like Instagram, there's only so many ways you can say, we're super excited to have Dinosaur Jr. back tonight, or we're stoked, or there's like, it gets a little old, and I've enjoyed kind of having the space to think about how to be creative with the club and do new things once we get back going. And also right now I'm just kind of thinking of, like so many people, survival, but also, I've kind of internalized it a bit more maybe than some clubs that's a little less forward facing. I've taken a lot of time to fix things that I've wanted to fix for 5 years, or, kind of when we do get back up, I want it to be the best version of the club that we can be, which is limiting in the other sense because you don't want to be spending a lot of money at all right now on, infrastructure at a venue. But I've gotten to do a lot of, small improvements and, dumb things that are so boring to talk about right now that I can't believe I'm doing. I fixed the will call stand, a wheel on the moving will call stand, these like incredibly boring things, but I have a list in a notebook that's like, 27 pages deep of ideas and things that I need to do with the club or want to do. And I've kind of internalized it and spent a lot of time on that.
Well, just to clarify also, we're talking about Saturn now, right?
Correct.
Yeah. I mean, you moved, it went from Bottle Tree, which you said like it was just in need of, was in disrepair, and you moved on.
It just wasn't fun anymore. It just wasn't fun for me in that particular room in that particular way at that point. So I just, I kind of had it's like starting a new band, it's the relationships and the feeling had just got kind of a little stale for me. So I wanted to do something that was uncompromising in every way, at least in my small little bird brain. And I wanted to have a really nice band apartment that could sleep like 2 bands privately, and multiple showers, and have a great PA system and a super easy load in, and just have everything function real basically and simply in a way that the band was going to enjoy and be able to take it easy and put on a good show, and have the space to do it. So that's just kind of where my brain was at.
Yeah. And it's in Birmingham. Is it close to your prior place?
It's within like if you had a powerful compound bow, you might could shoot an arrow to it. I don't know if you do.
I don't actually, but
okay. Well, if you ever come to Birmingham, I'll get one and we can try to see if we can hit it.
Is that like a bow? What is that, like one of those crossbow?
Oh yeah, we can do a crossbow. I'm not sure if I don't know anything about this stuff.
This is completely out of my purview.
I'm talking really off the cuff right now because I don't know much about this stuff. But I would imagine a crossbow has a more limited distance. I'll fact check this after the interview.
Yeah, please do. Go to the Walking Dead website. Maybe
right, exactly.
Yeah, I know. Last time I saw a crossbow was. I don't watch every episode, but that's like how often a crossbow comes into my life.
They definitely come in handy in a zombie apocalypse.
I guess. I don't know. It's just easier to shoot, and arrows, or you can make your own arrows, I guess. Now we're getting way off topic, but so how is Saturn cool for you, and what are some of the elements there that you're enjoying, and how are you faring during COVID? I know it's a multiple pronged question.
Well, it's an interesting situation for me because I was partnered for a good while, and started the club with the Bowery, which has had a ton of venues up and down the Eastern Seaboard, and really amazing folks, Jim Glancy, John Moore, Brian Harkerwriter, that have been help get the venue started. And I had a interest in working with them. They were already doing, and a guy named Tim Sweetwood actually helped us start it too. That was part at the time, who started Shaky Knees Festival in Atlanta. But the point being is, I had played, a lot of their amazing venues, the Union Transfer in Philly, the back in the day, the Bowery Ballroom, the Sinclair in Boston. There's so many great rooms that were, big city kind of, just functional and really well done, and the staff was really good. And I was like, I always had a good experience from an artist playing those venues, and they were already kind of promoting shows in Birmingham, so we decided to work together. because I was like, if they ever think about opening a club here, if I do it as well and it's around the same capacity, that's in a town this size, it's just a race to the bottom.
Yeah.
And they have been really great partners. But it also got to the point where they got connected to a larger company, AG Presents, and just in the kind of paradigm of how a large concert company like that works, a place our size in a secondary market just doesn't make a lot of sense for a lot of reasons. So, I'm not partnered in that umbrella anymore, which is kind of liberating in a way, but also just kind of a new way to figure out. And I've been figuring all that out in the midst of also figuring out how to survive this. So, yeah. And I think that's also taken my time away from also figuring, presenting any kind of, a lot of streaming and things like that. So it's been a challenge on multiple levels for us, but I love doing this. I have to say I'm so fortunate to having got to play music as long as I have and still play somewhat and have a venue where I get to bring friends and awesome new people to me. Like I'm 48 and I love still, if I have to carry somebody's SVT, bass head in to help out because a loader didn't show up or whatever happened. I love doing like the crappiest thing to make a show happen because I've been there and seen, like how much it adds when somebody just steps in and makes, like helps out a band or a band. There's a member that, is having a birthday that night. They need to have a birthday cake made in an hour. Like I love doing that ridiculous stuff that probably so many people hate, but I know and see it in people's eyes, what it means to them. And it's kind of this like, I appreciate music in a much more vicarious way now than I ever did, because even if I'm not like a huge fan of the particular music that a band's playing, making connections with people is, and the whole reason why I think I've done this and so many people that have kind of come from the punk and independent music world, especially in the 90s, and is that, you want to meet the people all over the world that are kind of your own people, that love records, that collect records, that want to have art push the world forward and do cool stuff and do screwed up things, and just be weird. And I still get to be part of that world. And I think that's been the hardest part of not being around, is not having that, frenetic day-to-day energy with that sort of thing. So, but I love doing this. It's an amazing thing to get to do. And doing it here in Birmingham, I feel is as much of a cultural imperative as it is anything else, as much as it is a business. Like if we were in Chicago, it would be a really cool place, I'd hope, but you still have the Lincoln and Talia Hall and all these other venues that are kind of in the same space, and it'd be like, oh yeah, that's cool, we could also go to that place. But here it's like, if we went away, there would be a massive void of music here in the city.
Does it make you feel sort of responsible or proud of the fact that you're sort of a linchpin of that in Birmingham?
Yeah, I actually am. I hate to answer yes, but I am proud of those things. And I really respect the people here in the city because they're not jaded, at least not yet. They still remember a time where there wasn't as many shows happening here. And it's amazing to me that somebody will come after a show and find me who I don't know and said, oh my God, thank you for bringing... I never thought I'd get to see Mudhoney or Ride or Low or, X or, whoever. And you brought them here. Oh my God. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I just drove a mile to get here. That means everything to me. That's like the game. That's the game.
Right. That's fantastic, man. That is fantastic.
Yeah. It's, and even though we don't have as big of crowds as like Atlanta and Nashville, comparable cities in our same part of the country, it's amazing to me that bands pick up on like they did the best they could. All these people are here, and we're going to play the best show we ever can for them. We're going to go off extra hard because, there may not be 1,000 people here, but there's 200 that are in it to win it.
Yeah, right. But you're an independent venue owner during COVID. What has kept you afloat right now?
A lot of...
I'm assuming you're still afloat is part of that question.
We are, and I wouldn't have answered yes to this maybe all that long ago, but I feel like we're going to make it now. I feel like, I hope we are.
Yeah.
At least, it's been a lot of keeping our heads down. Luckily, we had a really good, surprisingly good December, January, February. And
when you say good, what's coming in?
You mean actual money?
I mean,
wise,
yeah. Okay, so what's good? What's good?
Well, I mean, actually, like that. We had some reserves to work with early on to shut down.
Yeah.
And clearly. then, hopefully we've tried to, we gave all the employees what we could to help them out at the beginning for lost shifts and things that they had. And, it's been a lot of, pulling out personal money, doing everything I can to keep it, because just a sitting venue is costing money. Mm-hmm. And I feel for so many people, because it is really hard, and it is really hard with the amount we work here not being part of it. But it's just a lot of creative maneuvering of like getting money, shifting money, begging and borrowing and pulling out everything you can. It has been that process.
Yeah. Are you getting money from Save Our Stages Act?
We're definitely going to file there again with the with the changeover from being part of a partnered with a larger company to just being completely independent now. We're kind of getting to that a little late to the game, but I hope so. And I really hope, but places that have been in that world for so long, and there's so many venues that I would be crushed if they went away. I'm really curious, like, cause you're running this venue, what are your employees doing in general right now? And how do you, are you in contact with them? And you're saying, are you sort of sending out like a newsletter going, this is what's gonna, as we move forward here, maybe we'll be back in October, and when we are, can you come back on? Are you sort of having nightmares over personnel, filling personnel? We've luckily had a lot of people that are really fast thinking, creative, and have been able to fill in their work with other jobs, and super understanding people. Some of these people came over from Bottle Tree with me, so some folks I've been together with for 15 years, and there is a family element to it, and I think everybody's kind of survived however they can, and we definitely try to help out as much as we could on the front end with it. But yeah, I feel for them, because like that's we've had between all the facets of the club, we have like 30 employees, and and we get the kind of place it is. It's there's a lot of lifers there, and we miss doing it, and I think we miss getting to see each other. So that part of it's the hardest part.
So you think you've got a pool of I hate to say the word, a pool of human resources. I hate that fucking word.
Right.
A bunch of your friends and personnel and employees that are ready to hop back in because they want to be there. I could imagine that you have got a really great professional environment there. I mean, the way you're treating bands, I hope you treat your personnel the same way. I'm assuming you do.
Yeah, I believe they would say so. So get them in a closed room and see.
That's my next interview round.
Yeah.
A new series on it's Undercover Boss.
Yeah, I'm sure that would be you'd have a big listenership on 101 with Saturn employees.
Oh yeah, wow! All the Saturn employees.
Right, exactly.
are going to be listening to that thing.
Well, how have you found that other people have dealt with this? What is like the most creative example of? I mean, Ken, there again, I hate talking about somebody else's interview as much as I am, but he's found a multitude of ways. Yeah, he's a great guy, and had some, playing with the post. I used to tour with an artist called Shannon Wright, which is who often has played the Lincoln with Shellac, and probably the most amazing musician I've ever played with, frankly, and put out some records on Touch and Go, or actually Quarter Stick, that are some of my proudest things that I've ever done. But, it's the kind of thing where and we played shows with the Posies, and they were so nice and so kind, and Ken said one of the best compliments. He's like, that show you guys just played is in the top 5 I've ever seen. And like he named the other ones, and it was like Neil Young kind of stuff. And I was like, really? Are you not us? No, but it was John and Ken have always been so nice in all capacities. And they played Bottle Tree, and really great guys. Anyway, point being is, what have you found that other clubs have done that really kind of sparks you to like, oh man, there may be some life to this? Because you seem really positive earlier.
Yeah, well, yeah, earlier in this episode, or earlier in the year,
right. Before I wore you down.
Yeah, right. No, I am super positive. Well, I think like the most positive things that happen is that Save Our Stage has passed. I don't think that there was a shit ton of hope. I mean, I know that cash on hand is super important for venue owners, for sure. I mean, to be able to keep the thing afloat and taking care of their employees, and a good attitude like you have about employee relations and making sure they get placed in things that they could do, but still be available to you as a pool of good help and people that you want on board with you as things might start to open up. But Save Our Stages is definitely key. Cash, assets, potential, be it luck, skill, or fortitude, whatever that owners have, promoters have, or owners of venues, and sometimes they're one and the same, to be able to continue to have that enterprise move forward, or just be there and just ride this out.
Right.
It's it's hit or miss. Clearly, a lot of independent venues have suffered. I've seen the majority that are like you, have a commitment to it, and we're not so much in debt going into this that made it extremely difficult to be able to stay afloat. Right. But Save Our Stage is something. That's why I was asking you, like, how is that coming down? But you might have some other kind of issues with that. I'd like to circle back to some other venue owners and see how that is actually being, how that's playing out.
Right. It's still not, in place yet, and, not actually, anything's being distributed yet, but it's just great that it passed, and a lot of people are going to get the help that they need, for sure.
Absolutely. Now, you created an Airbnb out of part of Saturn. Is that correct? And I saw pictures of that. It looks fucking cool. I want to rent this place out. And one thing intrigued me was that you were like, you can rent this out when Saturn is open. A, is that true? And B, it also said, like, even if there's a show, you could still sleep up there.
Oh, no, the bands do. That's our green room. That's our artist facility. Okay,
so that's just kind of a thing that's happening during the pandemic.
That's happening during the space that we're doing just to survive.
Yeah.
Because we do. So I think in 2019 we did 270 shows or events.
Yeah.
So it's just occupied by artists, all the time. But that was a huge part of, one of my, deal breakers is I have to have an overnight apartment that's super clean and super nice and able for bands just to walk off the stage and go up, take a shower, and go to bed, and get on their bus or their van the next day or in the middle of the night, and not have to worry about all the other things. We've had so many bands book hotels and then do everything they can to try to cancel them. What's that? Because that whole concept of a band apartment, a lot of people think is kind of grosser than maybe our version of it.
Right. No, that's really cool that you have that opportunity for them, and that's got to be attractive for a band not to have to spend the night in the van. And just like, although they probably, if they're if they have to be someplace the next day, I guess there's a lot of 4 a.m. wake up calls.
Yeah, it's just we always have bands trying to push their bus call an hour or two just to hang a little longer.
I want to hang out here, man. I want to hang out here.
Right.
So get back to your playing just for a minute. You're also a sessions player. You've played with Polyphonic Spree and St. Vincent, among other efforts. And Man or Astro-man is still out there. What are you seeing personally from that going forward? Are you still going to be getting out there and playing, or kind of, are you a venue owner, are you a musician, or are you both?
I would say it's more like 70-30 or 80-20 now, and with the higher percentage being in the venue favor. Mm-hmm. The great thing about Man or Astro-man is there was a time where we just were a constant pestilence. We were like a machine that just kept rolling and rolling. And it was, we took it seriously enough that it was all we were doing for a long time. But we'd have to worry about, we got to get this in time so we can play South by Southwest, or we got to finish this record now. All those things that you kind of think about to be, successful or at least functioning, we don't have anymore. This is like our high school garage band again. So if somebody wants to bring us to a fun place, or a show's cool, or we want to have fun, like we just actually yesterday, a year ago, 2 years ago, a friend of ours made a documentary about Brainiac, who was an old touch and go band, and we played for the launch party for that, just because it seemed fun and we wanted to do it. And we'll still tour 4 weeks a year or something of that nature, maybe 5 or 6 on when we're doing more stuff. But it's just it's more about having fun than actually just something that we have to continually perpetuate.
Yeah. Is that something that's fun for you?
It is more like it was at the beginning than it ever was. But I will say this. I think we got to change this reunion term. I think it needs to be all these bands that have gotten back together. I think we all should be branded with the term reenactment rock.
Reenactment rock.
And there's a lot of, I've seen like Mudhoney there again, to mention them, they still crush it. And there's so many bands that are almost like, and when the Jesus Lizard got back together, they were better than even how great they were back in the day. And I've seen a lot.
I mean, you mentioned X before. There's a good example.
There's still there's so many people that kind of come back. But what happens is, and I hate to be so blunt about this, but you hit this thing where you get close to 50, you're like, I still got it. In fact, I got it more than I did when I was 20, and I'm going to prove it. And then you get a little older, and you're like, oh, my knees hurt like hell right now.
Right.
And like, you got to find a way to perpetuate it then. But I think, you do have to seize that moment of like that appreciation of how to do it in a way that's genuine to who you are now.
Yeah,
but still being branded, as something that you came up with. Like I came up with this weird idea when I was 19. Like, I didn't know I'd be
especially with you guys. Like that is exactly what I was thinking. I'm like, yeah, you want to do something that's authentic today. How do you figure that out when you were a surf punk sci-fi band? Or that's the problem right there. I said you were, right? I'm guilty of that too. All right.
Yeah, no.
Are you still a surf punk sci-fi band, and how do you reconcile that?
Yeah, I've used this analogy before, and it never comes off super great. So I'm going to throw it out one more time to see if I can.
Please use the one that didn't work before. Again.
Right. Okay.
Yeah,
so think about this situation. Okay, I'm going to put you in a hypothetical scenario here. Okay. So somebody comes up to you, and you had a really amazing, say, girlfriend or boyfriend in high school, or that you were in love with and thought were awesome, and you're like, this is the coolest person ever. But you break up, and life moves on, and as we do. And then somebody comes up, and you're single, right? No, you're not saying you are right now. This is a hypothetical situation. Follow along here. And they say, hey.
I'm with you. It's true, actually, so far.
Oh, nice. Well, so this may be applicable. They would love to date you again and see, just how things are and everything. And you're like, okay, yeah, that's great. I'm single. I could take this opportunity and maybe reconnect. And they say, oh, one other thing. They're still 16. They've been in cryogenic storage. And you're like, whoa, this is not right or even legal or should be allowed. See, like, it's kind of like that. We're revisiting this thing that we came up when we were 19.
Yeah.
And it feels slightly weird and illegal. So what you want to do is have your reenactment band be the partner you were with in high school that has actually grown and aged with you.
So is that kind of trippy to see fans out there that have? Or I guess the question is, the fans that you see that come see your shows, have they aged with you? Or...
Yeah, it's half and half, but the ones that are really weird to me are like, and this is the cool, like the cool piece of the internet is that there's like an 18-year-old kid out, and you're like, how do you know about the thing we do? Like,
that's got to be mind blowing a little bit,
and
right?
It's so cool, and I think there's been so many great documentaries and so much great like reanalyzation of this. I mean, for a while, I know music documentaries are so kind of overdone now, and every one of them has Thurston Moore in it. That's neither here nor there. He's always got a comment. I hope he's in ours. If we ever make one, because it kind of validates the documentary, or Rollins maybe.
Well, no, who were those names? I'm sorry.
I said, like, if there's some more from Sonic Youth or Henry Rollins is commentating in the documentary, it kind of, it's like, okay, it's a real documentary. Anyway, but
we'll make sure that happens.
But point being is there's so many bands like, I don't know, like Rodriguez or the Monks or like, that have had amazing documentaries come out where people have found out about artists, or really cool labels, Light in the Attic, like all these labels that have gone back and kind of made a band that should have been important when they were around, kind of make them known and finally get the respect that they probably always deserved. And I think that's really cool. I think that's really cool that that's able to do. It's not really something you could quite do when we were starting in the 90s. There was way less reunions and way less recontextualization of bands in a lot of ways.
Yeah, that's sort of like a propitious incident that would occur if someone was not. I see that if if there was not a popularity before, but all of a sudden they come back and they have some kind of a core audience, but then they get even more popular than they were before. It's very rare.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess that happens all the time.
Does that mean you're kind of wishing that? Do you wish you were more that when you guys would play?
We don't have the. I joke about this, and it's really dark, and I shouldn't go there, but we don't have the like third act of like. We don't have like. And then Coco the Electronic Monkey Wizard got on a bender and drove his Porsche off a cliff. We don't have that. I mean, we don't really have that second act of where things is like, and then things took a rough turn on like VH1 behind the music.
Right.
So
yeah, you are dark, dude.
I've sort of volunteered for that if we ever need it. Like if you guys ever get in financial trouble, and I need to get a Porsche and drive it off a cliff. Let me know, because I may take one for the team.
Do you have kids?
No. See, I put myself in a perfect situation to do the second act of the documentary. I'm absolutely being
now that you've tipped
here.
Off as to your own untimely death. That's awesome.
that's going to be the meta piece of this. Is like, and he actually said he was going to do it for this movie,
right? And broke it on Roadcase, which
exactly, which is a great show. Amazing. I loved hearing what I've heard. By the way,
thank you so much. That's really nice of you to say. I appreciate that.
I'm kissing your ass and mean it.
Well, both. When someone kisses my ass, I want them to mean it, man.
I do.
It just feels so much better
when
they mean it.
They're two discrete things. I'm kissing your ass, but I also genuinely mean it.
Thank you so much. Thank you. No need to kiss my ass. Just be genuine.
I'm joking.
No, man. Thanks so much. But I wanted to hear more just briefly about touring artists. Are you going to go back and do that the session work?
Not as much.
And I also wanted to say, by the way, I love your drumming in the band, and I'm kissing your ass. I just think the drummers make surf punk. Sorry, guitarists.
Yeah,
and I'm a guitar, and I dabble in guitar, so I have a certain bias, which I'm not even buying and allowing myself to buy into it.
Well, we started, and I think it's there again goes back to how I was saying we started is, and I think there's just these basic paradigms of how bands work, and I always come back to the great classic rock bands, and I always compare like the Who and Led Zeppelin, and the fact like Led Zeppelin is this giant battle tank that's like one forceful machine all together coming over the hills to destroy your village, right? And the Who is just like kamikaze craziness, everybody going in a different direction, working against each other, like all competing with each other. And we kind of came on that paradigm where we're like, every individual member is like, I'm going to get the most attention I can by doing what I do.
Interesting.
And then sometimes those bands are a disaster, and sometimes they work. And I will say, when we have had disastrous shows, it's because of that paradigm. But when we've been really good, it's for the same reason that we've all tried to be, in a silly, genuine way, be all individual show stealers in our own way. And it's sometimes kind of funny when it does work against each other, I think.
Well, how do you find the role of the drummer in either one of you have the working together or working apart? Isn't it kind of the drummer, to me, is the thread that unites both of those different branches of live music?
Well, luckily I don't sing. Thank God I'm not doing the Night Ranger thing for everybody. But I am I'm not the drummer in my mind. I'm the lead singer in my mind. And I'm the spokesperson for the band. Like, I do most of the in-between song talking if there's a delay or a thing, or talking to the audience. And I'm so annoying. I'll come behind the drums to the front of the stage and talk. And I'm just like, I don't have to sit down here back all the time. Who said that? Who made up that rule? And I'll have a sound guy say, you want a mic back here? I was like, no, I don't need a mic back here. I'll walk up to the front when I need to talk.
They're this is going to be a long night.
I'm such an annoying, demanding of attention drummer that if people like it, they like it. And then sometimes it's funny when it might be a little annoying, I hope.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I'm playing drums in the band, but in my mind, I'm like the shirtless lead singer. Which nobody wants to see me shirtless now, but and that's what I am in my head.
Yeah, I mean, it comes through, and that's a great role for the drummer to be. I always key in on the drummer.
Maybe.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it, man. I mean, it depends on the dynamic in the band. It depends on the music itself.
Exactly.
Surf punk is a great way to showcase being a drummer. But I wanted to talk to you about. Before I let you go, the famous mic incident, because I'd be remiss not to get that on the record from you. So you're probably tired of being asked this, but what the fuck kind of mic was this? And did this put you on the FBI most wanted list? And I'll just give his background that you the whole airport in Dallas shut down because TSA thought you had some kind of weapon, but it was a vintage mic or something like that. Is that correct?
Right, yeah, and which is
one of the craziest fucking stories I've ever heard. It's nuts.
Yeah, that was when I was playing with the Polyphonic Spree and going out to Dallas, which was where that band was based out of, and that was just a crazy ride in and of itself, because every time I was like, well, I don't know if I'm going to do this anymore. It's like, well, you guys are going to do this festival for Bowie, or you guys are going to play the Hollywood Bowl with Brian Wilson, or you guys are going to, play the Nobel Peace Prize Awards. Like, I can't quit yet. But early on, it was funny. I'd been in the band just a few months at that point, because a friend of mine, Seth Lozier, had worked for Astroman, and they had an opening. He's like, hey, come take this gig, and I did. But I was flying back with a microphone that the bass player makes. This really smart gentleman named Mark Pirro makes a thing called copperphones. You can look them up online. They're beautiful, kind of vintage mics, but they happen to look a lot like pipe bombs.
Wow,
like
that's
you actually,
weird.
it's like a cylinder with like two caps on the end. And like, if you look at it, you're like, oh yeah, it obviously is a pipe bomb. But I didn't think about that at the time. It's just a kind of vintage, weird looking.
Yeah. So
microphone.
what year are we talking here?
Well, these are newly made. And
No, I mean, like the
what year
incident.
this happened? This is 2004, I
Oh,
think.
yeah, but it's pretty fresh.
Pretty fresh on that, 9/11 thing, and people were really scrutinizing everything.
Yeah.
Somehow they didn't scrutinize it while I was still at the airport. I flew all the way back to Birmingham, and I guess and my luggage didn't show up, and I was like, oh God, if I gotta file a lost baggage claim, this is
Right.
annoying. And I go home, and I've been out there for a long time, and so it's like, oh God, I gotta wash the bird shit off the car. And I had this hose washing a bunch of bird shit. Oh, actually, I had just been to Taco Bell, holding Taco Bell in one hand, a yard hose in the other hand, washing bird shit off the car. And this David Duchovny looking dude comes up out of nowhere and said, "Hey, are you Brian Teasley?" And I was like, yeah, I was trying to think, should I lie about this? And I was like, nah, I should go ahead and be honest. And he said, and then he leaned into his lapel and said, "We got him."
Oh,
And
shit.
there were like black SUVs like around the street and everything. I was like, and I started thinking, oh my God, somebody planted something in my luggage. Probably everybody's fear, like kind of like a bad 90s comedy where like, it's a comedy of errors of just, oh, I'm not actually a terrorist. And that's exactly what the situation was. So they searched the house. They have me detained. They're, actually pretty nice about the situation. I have no idea what I heard them say that it was a suspicious device I was being held for. So finally, I just thought, I was like, oh my God, I borrowed my friend's microphone, Seth, and I wrapped it in a robe, like a cult member robe that the Polyphonic Spree wore, and put it in my suitcase. And God, that's what it is. And so I talked to them and I said, hey, I know this is a weird request from somebody that's being held by the FBI, but the band I'm in just played on Austin City Limits, and we used the microphone that I think you think is a bomb, like somebody singing to it on TV. If you let me go to and this is in the day of TiVo, if you let me go to my TiVo and play that performance, you can identify the advice. And like, of course they think like, are we going to touch this TiVo and it's going to be a bomb? Is that something he has set up in his house? But they let me do it. And that's how I got out of this situation. And my biggest claim to fame ever is I made the cover of the TiVo newsletter.
Are you?
That's number one. That's number one.
I'm so glad I asked
number
about
one.
this now.
Yeah, for getting out of the FBI with by using TiVo. But yeah, it was a crazy experience for sure. I mean, they had like called tons of my friends and family and doing all kinds of checks on me and contacted the multiple members of the band back in Dallas.
That's crazy. That is nuts. You're literally on the TiVo newsletter?
Yeah, and this was also, but what's so scary is around the time that there was a lot of the Guantanamo Bay controversy. I mean, I get there still is, but that was a time where a lot of the scrutiny about waterboarding was taking place. And I just had this vision of like, how much am I going to be gurgling? Just
oh my God.
But, I was really scared. Like I didn't know what was going to happen to me.
Right. Yeah, for sure. That's a great story from the road, man.
I was just going to say, I was flying to Dallas so much that at the airport, people would be bummed when I'd come through. They'd be like, "Oh, it's you. Hey, thanks for letting us lose millions of dollars by shutting down the airport." But there was like several times I flew through, and they would the TSA would actively say something to me.
Wow.
So I don't have a microphone this time.
That's crazy, man. God. Well, it's the life of a touring musician, right?
Right.
I mean,
There's always. I never thought that one would be on my list of things to have happen, but it did. It did.
Yeah. Wow. Well, Brian, such an interesting life in live music, and now you're running this venue, and it's just really cool stuff, man. I want to come down to Saturn, and I hope anybody who's listening to this will make that part of their plans when they're in the South checking out bands. I can't wait for us to get back to it. What are you hearing in terms of possible start date? What are your thoughts on that?
I think people start seeing shows in the fall. I think a lot of the bigger shows are getting drop kicked to 2022 just because there's so much of putting a tour together 6 weeks depending on all those cities being coordinated. So I understand, but I think we'll start seeing bands touring and playing some in the fall, at least I hope. But I think most of stuff is going to happen in 2022.
When you're saying big shows, what's your definition of that?
I'll use an example at not a specific example, but at Saturn, I would say the bands that would sell out the club that are probably going to be playing 2022, and some of the smaller acts or newer acts will go ahead and forge ahead in the fall, I think.
Yeah, is that kind of because it's a little more economically feasible for a smaller act to play a partial? We're assuming partial capacity, so that larger acts that are more popular and can sell out places will opt to wait until that's a possibility. Even
exactly, yeah, exactly,
yeah. That's what I was hearing too. I was hearing, well, you're pushing into 2022. A couple months ago, I was hearing, why would a band play partially? It's the same concept. Why would a band play a partial capacity show in the summer if they knew that full capacity was coming in the fall? But now you're taking and pushing that out another quarter, or two, which is reasonable, depending on the size of the band. But things will be coming back. I do think it's going to be partial, and we'll see, if there's testing and things like that. Are you in kind of a pipeline of looking at testing and what those opportunities might look like for a venue of your size, or what the regulations might be?
Yeah, I think we'll kind of follow along with what the rest of the, other folks in the independent, with other independent music venues are doing, just kind of fall in line. I think it's the kind of thing where everybody needs to have some sense of solidarity of how we're approaching it, both with safety, both with the presentation of it, and both with all the other liability elements to it. I think everybody kind of needs to get on board as far as at least a fairly generalized standard, and we'll probably fall along with what all those other things. Now, is that going to require people to show that they have been tested, or are they going to sign a waiver, or all these other sorts of things that have been presented? I don't exactly know, but my hope is that we all kind of collectively find the best route and proceed with that together. Yeah,
I mean, that's a good way of looking at it at the end of the day. In Chicago, there's a Chicago Independent Venue League, Civil. Is there something like that? Kind of, it would seem like it would be kind of maybe more regional in the South, and sort of get together with other venues, or can you get together with venues on that basis in a national or even a regional perspective?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we'll probably have both those conversations and keep up with it, both with luckily, from being a touring musician, I have a lot of friends at venues across the country, and hopefully all compare notes and kind of see what the best way to handle it is. And I think there's a lot of different directions that can go, because it's kind of divided into actually making people safe, and then giving people the comfort of having them presented like it's, having the confidence that it's safe. And they're not always, they're just corollaries. They're not always the exact same things. I don't really know if taking everybody's temperature is actually going to pop up something and prevent somebody from getting sick or whatever. But I think it's also important to do all the things that people expect, and that might help to give them confidence that at least you're working hard to do everything you possibly can to keep people safe and be respectful toward people.
Yeah, if you're taking temperature, you're making sure that people aren't going in the venue sick. I think a major factor of this whole thing is figuring out what kind of asymptomatic spread there might be. But I'm not like a fucking physician, so anyway, you're doing the best. You're doing the best as anyone can do, and I applaud you for outside of COVID, just apart from COVID, what you're doing at the venue and how you're treating the employees and treating the bands. I think that's really great stuff, man. That's really great stuff. I love to see that.
Thank you. We try to be the little
awesome
engine that could, with the Alabama low bar attached to it. So yeah, so we always get that handicap.
Okay,
gotta come full circle. Gotta come. Hey, if you're from Alabama, you need to have the ability to also make fun of Alabama. Otherwise, you'll never survive here.
Okay, you can do that. I can't make fun of Alabama. I can make fun of.
You're
I
one
can
of
make
the
fun
few
of SoCal. I'm not going to get on a podcast with a guy from Birmingham, Alabama, and make fun of Alabama. And I haven't even been there, so I'm really not going to make judgments on it.
Well, I'm going to fly you down. This is a real promise, and I'm a partially crazy person. I'm going to fly you down and have you come to any show of your choice if you have the night off, and put you up and treat you to the best Southern experience for a good show that you could possibly have.
That would be fucking awesome, man.
Yeah,
thanks so much.
100%.
That would be great.
It's going to happen.
That would be great.
It's going to happen.
That would be great. That would be killer, man. Thanks so much for being here, Brian.
Thank
I really
you.
appreciate it.
I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate your time, man. Best of luck to you, and we'll be talking. Thanks again for being on Roadcase.
Absolutely, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, take care, man. Bye. Okay, that was Brian Teasley of Man or Astro-man and the owner of the Saturn venue in Birmingham, Alabama. I don't know about you, but that Mike incident story about getting stopped by the TSA or the FBI or whatever that found it in his luggage, just that someone from a quote-unquote science friction band that, in Brian's words, gets heat for having a mic that looks like a bomb in his luggage is just all too fitting, scary and sad, and telling of those times, today's times, but still it's ridiculous. And that he was on the cover of TiVo newsletter. That's just an amazing story. But Brian's brings all of his experience on the road to the way that he treats bands that comes through. They get to stay in the green room that's above Saturn. He brings them whatever they need, helps people out, very in touch with bands' needs for mental health and communication. And I really think he's saying it jokingly about being a part-time therapist for bands, but from what I can tell, I think that he probably does a really good job with that. I hope to make it down to Saturn really soon and check it out. I want to thank Brian again for being here. I wanted to remind everyone to support Roadcase podcast and to become part of Roadcase community by going to patreon.com/roadcasepod. I want to thank Brian again for being here. Thanks to all of you for listening to this episode of Roadcase. Thanks again so much for listening. And I'd like to encourage everyone to get involved with Roadcase. You can do so in a number of different ways. You can email me at info@roadcasepod.com with questions, comments, and even suggestions for guests. Or you can follow us on the socials, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. We're at RoadcasePod. And we have a YouTube channel called Roadcase Podcast. And if you are able to and like to support Roadcase, we have a Patreon site at patreon.com/roadcasepod. And of course, you can subscribe to this podcast on your favorite listening platform. And if you could please rate and review the podcast while you're there, that would be great. So I want to thank Walter for this awesome theme music that we have. And I want to thank all of you for tuning in and listening to Roadcase. We have a lot of great episodes coming up, so I'll see you on down the road.